happier place to be.
Maple syrup is the best. It's so good. Oh. Just be present with me and love me.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. When they start doing this weird hello.
So they make it enticing to be blameless, for what they do, and enticing to be a victim and to gain status and sympathy and other entitlements for being a victim.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Meredith Miller this week. Fun chat. It's a good one. You guys should enjoy it. About like some healing stuff and kind of some COVID stuff and a little all over the place. Fun one. It's a good one. You guys enjoy it. It was definitely an enjoyable chat. Graham has his new blue microphone that you guys can't see. Of course, was this the first one when we started? This is the first one because, of course, some people have probably noticed that we stopped streaming. We stopped live streaming. It's going to be more of a special occasion thing, and of course we don't live stream the Rockfin episodes when we do them, but we do post them as video. But we're sort of backing out all that and just focusing on getting the podcast out again. Of course, all that stuff will still go to YouTube, so you guys will still get to listen. You'll just get it as an audio only podcast. And that's the new Year's news in Grimerica.
I just want to expand on this a little bit because this was one of my favorites out of we've almost done 600 interviews probably. Like, I think Meredith is one of these, she's not just a healer. I think she brings out the best of academia and also this holistic approach and I didn't even realize when I booked her that she had been through NDEs and this shamanic journey as well, which made it super interesting, very holistic. But when I first heard her, it was just strictly sounded like it was, psychological trauma healing and, abuse, getting out of abusive relationships. So it was one of my favorite. I think she's so articulate at what she talks about. Fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. So, we'll get back to Meredith and her creds a little bit later after we make you guys listen to some lazy ramblings here. Of course, you can check that timestamp in the show notes. Swipe right to those show notes if you're using Overcast. That's the one I use. So you'd swipe right. There's your show notes. You can click on stuff. You can donate to the show while you're there. Check out all our other work while you're there. And find the timestamp right at the top to the interview if you don't want to listen to my bullshit.
Our bullshit. Yeah.
Mostly my bullshit. You bring less bullshit to the table.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
I like how you take that as a compliment.
Speaking of that, yeah, exactly. Speaking of that, I do have an email. I got a project operation and a quote ready for you today.
Do you want to get right into that? Or, it looks like we're getting out of the cold snap here.
Well, yeah, geez, I don't know. It's been a long, cold winter. I was driving lots in the last couple of days, -20. Again, it's like balmy when it hits -20. I was getting, went from -30 to -20.
It's been the coldest in a while.
That's without the wind chill, but it just feels like we're in this really long spell, and even Vancouver's got a ton of snow, more than they ever get.
Yeah, it's been cold. Yeah. It hasn't been like as cold as it's been in the recent years, but it's fucking lasted. It's just been like fucking cold for weeks on end. Today it warmed up to about -15 Celsius. It was nice. I was able to get out and get some work done on the car and get a bunch of stuff done.
At -15.
-15. It's still cold. You got to come in every 10-15 minutes and warm up.
But it doesn't feel that bad because it's really it feels balmy compared to how it's been.
So it's supposed to be it's going to be +10 Wednesday.
Does this put a little bit of a damper on the climate change narrative, or is this part of it? You think? Are they just going to use this?
They say this is part of it.
Yeah. It's part of it. Yeah. So just get ready for the lockdowns because the weather's getting too extreme on both ends, or what?
Oh, I don't know about that, but they're definitely not going to back out of the cooling as part of it.
I mean, I'm being a little hyperbolic, but that seems to me that they're prepping for that.
Definitely doesn't get hotter here. It hasn't been hot here like it used to be, but I digress.
Yeah. Well, I could use these winters to go away and just have some. Like I was telling you, I moved here.
We're due.
From Vancouver, and it was like -5 to +5. I was out running in the snow, and it was like I was like, oh, these winters are great.
Yeah, that was like 12 years ago.
Yeah,
I feel like we're due to come around on some easy winters again, but we got another shitty one or two coming at us, I think, and that's if we're not, slipping back into glacial maximum.
Exactly.
So I see you got your blue balls on there. You went with blue on your microphone.
Yeah.
You never know what I'm talking about. No one else knows what I'm talking about either, but Graham got a new, nice, bright blue pop filter.
Is it lame or?
No, it's fine. It's a little lame. It would be cooler if it was.
I
wanted to get a green one, but they didn't have one. And they didn't have a black one. They had red and blue.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's not so bad. So, what are you going to do this week? It could be +10. It's going to be warm all week.
I'm reading a book this week. A couple books.
We're not going to get out and enjoy the warm
fantastic weather? Books I got a book. I'm reading 3 books right now.
All for audiobooks or?
No, just 1 for audiobook and 2 for the show.
When will you be done that?
Which one?
The one you're reading for the audiobook.
This week, like in a few days, yeah. I'm reading The History of Spiritualism from Arthur Conan Doyle. Pretty interesting so far.
Oh, yeah.
Tough read, though.
I should mention we do got out now the last book's lagging behind a little bit, but be coming out the next few days or submitted in the next few days. But the entire Charles Fort collection now available by Adult Brain, Low, Newlands, Wild Talents, and of course the Book of the Damned.
Yeah, I kind of gapped out in this interview with Meredith. I just couldn't remember. I was trying to remember like the gist of sort of Fort's take on the Book of the Damned, because he was talking about mass formation multiple times, and his books are fantastic because it's the way he describes. I mean, it's pretty deep, but it's the way he describes our reality, and he just stays kind of like right in the middle. He calls himself an intermediatist, and he calls this dogmatic scientific paradigm the positivist, right? Because they're looking for everything to come to this positivist solution. So they just keep some data, whatever fits the current narrative, and they just leave all this other data. So he takes all this other data and he kind of comes up with some crazy theories in some ways, but his point is that he doesn't know, and we will never know the truth. Really, it's a fluid thing. Like everything is in flux towards something else. It's always trying to move towards this other state, and it's just the way he describes it is fantastic.
And of course, the Francis Bacon one just got submitted too. Not read by you, read by Robert Frederick, past guest of the show. Written by Francis Bacon. I forget what
I think it's called Wisdom of the Ancients by Bacon or something.
Wisdom of the Ancients, yeah.
That's our 3rd Wisdom of the Ancients book, which is weird in itself, I think. Am I right about that?
In a roundabout sort of way. There's a couple of different tweaks on it. How the ancients this or... Yeah. Well, Manly P. Hall's what the wisdom ancients expect from their disciples was that title. Was it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. What do you want to do? The Oppo or what do you want to do first?
Whatever you want.
All right, let's do
the Oppo is going to kind of be an advertisement to our other show, Outlawed, if that helps.
It's the profound quote of the week. Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week. Can you guess the human who spoke?
This sounds very Fortean, actually. So guess who wrote this? The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of dark seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and our frightful position therein that we will either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
Charles Fort.
No, I said it was almost 14.
Oh.
Well, who's almost 14? Who would be the fiction fort or the fiction fortiest?
I don't
Fortinist.
know, man.
H.P. Lovecraft?
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, darker, way darker, of course, but
He's the Forktioner? Fiction Forction?
14. I meant to say 14.
Who's Lovecraft again?
H.P. Lovecraft. Oh, he wrote some
The Day the
interesting
Earth Stood
fiction
Still or whatever?
that's sort of, it's kind of so
Is it
creepy
shitty
and so.
sci-fi?
No, it's got a super cult following. I mean, he's really popular. The Cthulhu, the Cthulhu stuff, right?
I'm going to pull up some movies.
Ugh.
Cthulhu? Like Jerry
yeah,
Cthulhu?
Yeah.
Like Jerry Cthulhu?
No, like
Or
the
like the
Call of
god?
Cthulhu, like yeah,
H.
like the ancient one, the dark one. I mean, in some ways, maybe he was spot on about what's happening. It's just more of an invisible dark entity. Who was talking about that as well? There was somebody else talking
Call
about
of
that.
Cthulhu. The Dunwich Horror.
Oh, it was the Nag Hammadi Library talks about
The
that.
Mountains of Madness. What? I've never heard of any of this. Deep Ones? Color Out of Space? Dagon, Reanimator, Call of Cthulhu, Necronomicon.
Necronomicon.
From Beyond, the Dunwich Horror. I've never heard of a single one of these movies. Not one. Not one of these movies.
That's why I told you it's a cult following. You're not in the cult.
By what cult?
The Cthulhu cult.
Are you in it?
Well, I mean, there's aspects of that in Dungeons and Dragons, for example. So I put a little bit of that
Aspects of
mythology
what?
into there.
Oh, you like watch movies you plagiarize?
I've played also a Call of Cthulhu role playing game a little bit. So
I thought you were going to say I've plagiarized Lovecraft for Dungeons and Dragons.
no, it's part of it.
It's part of it. How so?
All the mythical monsters and creatures and magic and everything is basically in Dungeons and Dragons. Like it's interesting how it's all based on real mythologies.
Well, I
and
think
real
isn't whatever
magic.
you want to be in Dungeons and Dragons in Dungeons and Dragons?
Yep. Plus all the
So do you think like someone else's versions of Dungeons and Dragons has all those characters?
yeah, totally. Yeah, well, some of them are in the official books, right?
Some of them?
Some of them,
How
yeah.
many?
Like Cthulhu's probably in one of these.
Well,
books.
Cthulhu's a god.
Well,
That's
what are you
different.
talking about?
Cthulhu's not a mythical creature. It's
What do
a
you
god.
mean? Well, yeah. The mythical creatures, gods, the deities, all that, right? They're all
So
all in there.
Sasquatch?
Yep. Yeti, Sasquatch. Yeah. Slender Man. I mean, all that stuff. Like,
And they're in the book?
yeah. Some
Like just
some
in
books, yeah.
Some books.
Well, yeah.
Very vague. You're being very
I mean,
evasive.
the Ouroboros. I mean,
I don't know who
I'm not
that
being
is.
vague. No, well, there's the official books, and then there's a bunch of these other books that people make that are almost official but not quite.
Can you
They're
make
those
one?
ones. Yeah, I could. Yeah.
And would it be official or not quite?
No, it won't. No, you can't get. You don't even want it to be official at this point.
Who owns official Dungeons and Dragons? Is it like a brand?
It's
Trademark?
Hasbro.
Hasbro.
Yeah.
So you're a Hasbro.
Hasbro's super woke. It's getting woke, dude. They've already, you know what? Some of the most interesting monsters are now they're changing the lore of them and not making them evil because they don't want to make monsters evil anymore. Now it's very
Well, not
strange
all
what's happening.
monsters
Like
are evil.
they're taking slavery. Dude, some of these monsters are inherently evil. They want to take over and enslave you, but they can't enslave you, but they can slaughter you. It's okay to slaughter you, but don't enslave the humans.
Well, slavery's bad, bro.
I know murder's okay though.
Well, I mean, murder's murder.
This is the way people are making fun of what's happening.
I don't care. But I drove by a little store the other day, I was actually headed to the music shop to buy that blue ball mic cover there. And across the street, I seen the Ogre's Den or the Ogre's Lair or something like that. And I was like, what the fuck
I've been
is
there
that?
before, yeah.
And I was showing I was like, Grandma would love that place. I was like, I feel like there's people in there playing Dungeons and Dragons and shit.
Yeah, well,
all the
ogres
time.
aren't evil anymore. You know, they can't be.
It doesn't
you can't
imply evil.
generalize
The
these
sign
evil
doesn't
races.
imply evil. I mean, it implies that you're an ogre when you go there to hang out. Clearly, right? You're the one frequenting the den. So they're probably okay with ogres not being evil because they identify as ogres. How is it? What's the scene like?
Oh, it was many, many years ago. It was just people sitting around playing games.
You should go back.
Dude, it's a lot of these places during COVID, they're full. They're just full on board. Like,
well, of course,
I probably
the
can't even
nerds
get in
are
unless
going to be
I'm jabbed.
the nerds are
probably
going to be the first ones, or test.
Well, yeah, but what?
Of course, the nerds are more susceptible.
Yeah,
You know, it was bound to happen. You can't
I know,
judge them.
It's just so disappointing.
You
to see
can't
it
judge
happen.
'em.
It's so disappointing.
You can't expect them to have been the point of pushback, though. I mean, come on. They're playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're an outlier, bro. You're a major outlier here. And I mean,
You know what else? You know what else about the community?
You
too,
own a
is-
bow
is
and
a lot
arrow.
of them are they're very dogmatic scientists, like in a lot of ways. They're they're kind of the scientism thing really fits with the
well,
nerd
of course.
community, which
I
is
mean,
very
that's
interesting. Well,
like because
but
most of
why?
them are
You're
probably
talking
like
about all the
they're all like some
mythologies and-
sorts of scientists, probably who have been like down that they've been like indogminated fucking for 15 years.
Oh, I like that. That's a new word. Indogminated. I like that.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah.
It should be trinated. instead.
Indogmatrinated.
Indoctrinated. Anyway, I digress. Patent pending. Trademark.
So this is going to be a little bit of a COVID intro and a COVID app. The email I have is from a listener, and it's kind of like his new angle on COVID and conspiracy theories. So I think it's fitting for an email to read in this one, because Meredith definitely pushes back on all this. I mean, she's gone off of YouTube. She's on all these other platforms now. It's great to see people like Meredith pushing back in her own way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a neat little thing that's happening right now. It's weird. I feel like in some ways, I mean, I'll go back to it again. I feel like in some ways they're trying to get out of COVID, but they can't. They're because of the mass formation or whatever's going on. But it's like, I mean, it's like, holy fuck, man. It's like, holy fuck. You see the stuff that goes on when they say, like, we're having school, we're having in-person learning. People are fucking freaking.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I say, I think it's a loud minority. I think it's like an extremely loud 15 or 20%, because most of the people I just talk to in fucking general are like over it. Everybody I know is over it. Even the people that are like, you know, they're double jabbed and maybe even, actually, I don't know if I know anyone who's boosted.
I don't know a lot of people that are getting the booster.
I don't
most
know a lot
people
of
that are
people
double
that got
jabbed.
the
They most they're telling me. I mean, mind you, that most people told me they weren't going to get
until
the
they
jab
change
to
it,
begin with.
until you need it to get in places, and then you'll
Yeah.
lose some of them. But yeah, I mean, overwhelmingly, people are like, seems they're coming around. And then like the Alberta government is like, they just seem like they're trying, in my opinion. It seems like it to me. That's the sense I get. Like they're trying to like, okay, we can't say no isolation anymore, but we'll just knock it down to 5 days. It's 5 days. Or if you test positive and you're asymptomatic, you're fine to just come to work. And the rumor is, the rumor mill
Are
is
they
that
officially doing
is
that now?
that employers are like leaning into it, saying like, "Oh, well, you just have the sniffles now. You're over the fever. You're fine. You're good." Because they're desperate to have employees, right? So I mean, we're just caught in this fucking loop where everybody's freaking the fuck out, and I don't know. But in some ways, I feel like I feel like there's some people in the government that maybe didn't realize there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. That public health might have been the perfect one to get everyone riled up, but it's the one that's impossible to unrile up.
Because of so
Because
many
we're all
people that
fucking
are on board.
over entitled fucking over hypochondriacs as it fucking is. right?
Right.
The Google generation where everybody's got a fucking gluten allergy and everybody, you know what I mean? We're in that fucking generation now where everyone's got a disorder. There's something wrong with everyone. We're all a victim of some sort. And, you know, a couple things sort of rolled into one there that make us. And not only that, people are fucking sick and tired of fucking slaving. I mean, let's not forget that for a lot of people, even pre-pandemic, life wasn't fucking great. They're barely fucking scraping by or not scraping by or on food stamps or the Canadian equivalent to that. Or you know what I mean? Like eating all their groceries from Walmart because there's no other fucking option for them, you know? And I know a bunch of these people that literally fucking don't have enough money to scrape by on that service level, you know, $15 to $20 an hour range. You're fucked. You're fucked. In Calgary, you're fucked. Even if there's two of you.
You can't have a family on that.
You can't have a family on that. You can have 3 or 4 guys or 3 or 4 gals or
Sharing
2 gals sharing an apartment. That works fine. But as soon as you want to try having a family or a single income family on that, it just can't work. And I mean, me and you are kind of privileged in a lot of ways because we had good jobs coming into all this and we've had good jobs for a long, long time. Whereas, you know, someone who ain't working at a fucking restaurant or this or that anymore, it's much easier to say, fuck it, man. I'm never going back to that shit. Or, you know?
Yep.
Fill in the blank. I mean, there's this whole like underlying class problem that happened during COVID that, you know, in a lot of ways it seems like it's almost like the like what were the ones we were doing way back in the day that actually for a couple of weeks seemed pretty authentic. The like 99% or whatever. What was that first one called? The first one that came up when they were like anti all the corporations and everything. You know, before the corporations were allowed in the gay parades and all that shit. What was the Occupy Wall Street?
Occupy, yeah.
I feel like Occupy for not the whole time. It got weird at the end, but in the beginning, it seemed like it was a bit kind of authentic. Now I've completely lost my train of thought, and there's people jumping in the Zoom because they want to play Dungeons and Dragons with you. Anyway, the point is that I feel like they can't just end COVID tomorrow or they'll have a fucking mutiny on their hands. And I think they're predicting that it's worse than the mutiny they've got right now.
Yeah.
And Trudeau's a total douchebag. I mean, hopefully we can use this to actually separate, you know, hopefully the West will actually maybe finally think about pushing itself away from Ottawa.
Well, that's why I have a different theory than you on this whole thing because of what Trudeau, Macron, and the Boris Johnson. They're dividing pretty harshly right now. I mean, I don't want to get into the details of that, but I mean, this isn't going away because they're starting to ramp up the rhetoric, which is scary because you're talking about what you're talking about is what's happening sort of in real life on the street, or people are, you know, that those people that are the loud minority that don't want to go back to school with their kids are going to flip out. They're going to go right along with all these leaders, Macron and Trudeau.
Yeah, we'll see.
How far are they going to go?
I still don't see any of that. So when I start actually seeing that, and I mean, I'm dating a girl who's vaccinated. You know what I mean? I'm hunting with people that are vaccinated. I'm hanging out with people that are vaccinated all the time, and they're not into the rhetoric. They're not even into the third shot.
What was your example though about the school?
Though the 20%.
Yeah. Well, I think that's 40%, but
yeah, I don't think that because the only place I see what you're talking about is online, right? Like I don't go to my kid's school when I drop them off in the morning and hear anyone freaking out.
Right.
The messaging from my kid's school, messaging from my kid's school is overwhelmingly, we can't wait to have these kids back in class.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about what
we
Calgary
think this is important. No, I'm just saying online internet in general. Alberta's the one who's decided that the schools are open, and I see the internet that people are freaking the fuck out. But
in Alberta,
in Alberta.
Okay.
But I still have yet to meet in my life, actual real life, a single person that gives a fuck. That gives a fuck about my vaccine. Like I said, there's one person that's ever gave a fuck about vaccines. I can get on the city job sites now with a test too, they say. But
that's great.
You know, there's been these policy pushes on me, but there's never been. I mean, I'm going out to hanging out with people that are vaccinated all the time. Because I mean, in Alberta, we're at 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Almost everybody I know is vaccinated.
Yeah.
And to a person, they don't give a fuck. And they know to a person. I mean, my stance is not, you know.
I thought your example was a little more closer to home about the schools. So I guess it's more of what you're saying is the government's hearing this from Alberta online somewhere that they're freaking out about that.
Yeah, and how much of that? So then, how much of that is even real?
Right.
Because I'm at the point where I'm really starting to wonder how much of the internet is real. People have crazy names on social media. If you actually look, who put 7 fucking numbers behind their name? Like, would you do that if Graham Dunlop was taken? Would you put Graham Dunlop 567432179?
No, of course not.
No,
Unless
of course
some
not.
Real magical significance.
No,
to it.
but there's fucking hundreds of accounts like this, and they're all just arguing bullshit all day long.
Oh,
so then it's like, and then when I go around in my day-to-day life, I can't find a single fucking person that gives a shit. And you know, my girlfriend works in a school. She's like, no one here, you know, the teachers kind of don't want to work, but their biggest concern right now is there's the system stretched thin. So if there's like teachers call in sick or anything like that, because I mean, and I know people who are milking the Omicron right now, just, you know, because it's like a free 5 days off work. You don't get sick leave in Canada. You know, the one thing that shows the giant scam is through all of this, the government has still never stepped up and say, okay, we will take some of your tax money. And if you're sick, stay home. And we'll pay you for 5 days or something like that. We'll pay the whole fucking country to stay home healthy. But out of all of it, we still haven't come up with some proper sick leave plan. And they still want to say if there's sick leave, it's going to be on the small business person.
Yeah.
Which is hard to swallow, right? If we had an employee, we couldn't afford to fucking pay him not to be here. We can't even afford to have an employee here at Grimerica. But when we get to the point where maybe we can, we definitely can't afford to pay them for a week not to be here. At first, you know what I mean? When you can, you can. But unless there's a tax incentive for it, because the government's taking a shit ton of fucking tax money from you. But anyway, getting back to the point is it really makes me wonder. And because I can't find anyone that's not happy that their kid's going to school or that, you know what I mean? Or that's, and it's not because, and you see this bullshit narrative that it's because people don't want to hang out with their kids. It's not that, man. I love hanging out with my kids. I love it. My kids want to go to school. They're sick of it. They're sick of staying home. And what they definitely don't want to do is go back to fucking Zoom school. Right?
But they're in a pretty good, like, they're not in your typical public school, are they?
Well, yeah, they're just in an elementary school in their town. I mean, the whole Alberta school system is pretty decent.
Right.
Kids don't want to fucking, you know, they bitch about getting up in the morning and stuff like that. But at the end of or they might be happy if they didn't have to go to school and they could just frolic and play with their friends and just live life. There's no school, but it's not that. It's sit and stare at a fucking computer screen all day, and they don't want to fucking do that
without the interaction of the other kids.
Exactly.
You might as well be there.
They want to be there with their friends. They want to hang out. They want to do all that kind of stuff. And parents know that their kids want to do that. You know, I get that the school is indoctrinating my kids to a certain extent, and I got to push back against that.
Indoctrinating them?
Indoctrinating. But my kids also enjoy school. They enjoy having other role models in their lives that aren't their mom and dad. They, you know, there's
but I'm sure it's not as bad when you're showing them how to create and build things and do their own thing at home. That's right. It doesn't feel to me like it's as bad of indoctrination. Because
so I guess
they have an alternate view on everything.
I guess the point of the story is that I still can't find anybody in real life. Except for that one person that one time who, you know,
I know,
and I found out since then that he might have some real health things going on. So he's probably a little paranoid and, you know, lashing out at all the wrong people. But, you know, overwhelmingly everywhere I go to a person, to like every single person I talk to now is just like, and it even came up at the dentist the other day while my kids' teeth are getting cleaned. And I was just like, yeah,
I know.
And I just slipped out that I've had it, and they're just, oh, we had it since blah 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 blah.
I know, and I maybe you're seeing a difference in Alberta. I don't want to belabor this point, but you know, it's different in Quebec and it's different in BC. You know, it is different. There is.
Yeah, I can't speak to those. I can only speak to Alberta because I'm outside every day.
Yeah.
But if I go online, everybody's freaking out in Alberta about everything.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
especially schools right now. Online, that's happening. Everywhere I go in my life, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Which makes me really start to wonder about the integrity of social media.
Yeah.
But the problem is the government officials are reacting to social media.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the temperature is in Quebec.
That's so interesting.
I don't know what the temperature is. I would have to be on the street in Quebec talking to Quebec people to say, yeah, Quebec people are all in on this. Because it could just be that the Quebec government is more fucking...
One of my relatives is like, she's fine with the lockdowns and the curfews, and she thinks that that's all. She trusts everything they say in the media. Like I'm getting personal like relatives, but then again, I have two relatives that are pushing back just as hard as
and that's just three people. So, and then I mean, I can guarantee you, we know some other people in Quebec that have the exact same mentality as we do too. So it's like, what's the actual ratio? If you went and talked to 100 Quebecers. But here's the thing: in the average week, I talk to 100 Albertans. Yeah, and no one gives a fuck. They're all just fed the fuck up, and we're talking about middle of winter, -30. You're still allowed in the restaurants and shit, and people have just had enough. They're just sick of. Now I don't know. Maybe some Quebec people and some Ontario people and some BC people can let us know if it's different. Where they
for sure,
are.
and BC. I mean,
But the interesting thing is, I dip my toes in a lot of different sectors too, right? Like I'll go from a fucking hospital to a high-rise building downtown to the Calgary Zoo.
Yeah, you get a pretty good. Yeah, you get a pretty.
And
good
none of those places give a fuck. You know what I mean? The zoo used to. I should probably not name names. Somebody, some of these places used to care, and now it's just like.
Somebody I know in BC. I was just talking to him yesterday. They were in the lineup to get a test. For hours in the car to get a test, and when they get up to the thing, they're supposed to do the mouth swab, the gargle, because they didn't want to do the nose thing. So they get up to the end of the line finally, and they just hand them a rapid antigen test and tell them to go home and take it.
Nice.
I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I got this email. This is a good transition into this email here. This is a run-in with COVID, in quotes, and a new angle on conspiracy theories. Hi, guys. I wanted to share my run-in with the virus as another anecdotal case for you to consider.
Ooh, let me guess.
Please email.
This is from Blake Art?
No. Please email us it's from Christopher. Please email us at graham@grimerica.com and with your feedback, with your stories about COVID, with your thoughts, your theories, all that stuff. Or UFO sightings or spiritual experiences or trip reports or synchronicities, whatever you want.
I'm going to go to the grocery store today after we're done.
Nice.
I enjoy this once in a while now. It's like a little outing.
Oh my God. Here we go. In doing so, I briefly dip my toes into the virus theory debate. I give my own theory on what this virus, for lack of a better term, is, and then I open up a greater conversation about perception and our understanding of the world through different models. As a skeptic and non-believer of anything to do with the mainstream narrative and even the existence of viruses themselves, I now definitely believe that there is something to this whole COVID thing. Last month, my flatmate, who I was living in close proximity in a small apartment, came down with a strange illness that turned into bad pneumonia. See, that sounds like what I know people that have this. The way he described it, it was very similar to Graham's experience. He described it as a synthetic feeling, alien-like. And then he was in some sort of energetic battle. It's not funny.
I know.
And then he was tricked into thinking that he wasn't going to make it.
Is that what happened to you?
No, I wasn't tricked.
You just honestly thought that?
I didn't fall for it. I won the battle.
You won the spiritual battle with the Chinese with the Chinese spirits.
All by some force that felt very foreign. It was to the point that he asked me to write a will for him, and he was making arrangements for what would happen to his remains. He has since recovered, although he suffers from the damage he caused to his lungs from all his coughing. So there was about a 2-week period that I felt very tired as well. There was a palpable heaviness and depressive feeling in the apartment, but this could also have been me falling under the spell of that same energetic vibration. The guy was literally living in the living room of our small apartment, and I couldn't possibly avoid him entirely. So I may have technically come down with whatever this thing was, but I never got a fever, never had a sore throat or anything like that. Just what I would describe as an unusual fatigue. Although another factor that could have precipitated my fatigue was that I was living in a far northern latitude for the first time, and it was nearing the darkest time of the year with the sun setting at about 4. I subsequently got tested for COVID about a week later, as required by the authorities for my return to Canada, and I tested negative. Since then, I've tested negative twice. Once at the airport, and the latest one during my 14-day period of mandatory house arrest, where I had self-administered the test with the help of a nurse watching me through my computer.
Oh, I did that one.
Yeah.
On my phone, but the last time I said I declined. I said no.
Overall,
and then the cops showed up at my house.
Yeah. Fuck. That's. And
I still declined.
They actually, but you weren't here at the time.
I was out.
Yeah.
And then as an update, nothing ever happened from that. Nothing in the mail.
No, that's good. Interesting.
I think I'm going to bring those coppers a little, what could I bring?
Gift?
Maybe a Tim's card?
Nice.
For not falling for the fascism? I guarantee you the fucking government of Canada told them to charge me with something. I guarantee it. Yeah. After the earful I gave that lady. Anyway, sorry to interrupt your story.
Overall, my thoughts on the virus are that whether you call it a virus or not is besides the point. I agree. Steiner elucidated the mootness of the virus question years ago, essentially equating our medical system today with that of the Middle Ages. They understood the phenomena of viruses as caused by spirits. We see them as caused by germs. Nothing is substantively different in the way things
Substantially?
are. Substantively.
Substantively?
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yep. Just the way we look at them. It's like the influence of the observer in the double slit experiment. Both the germ theory and the ghost/spirit theory are different models or maps of looking at the same thing. I do believe it is possible to contract something from someone by exchanging information, either energetically or physically through the sharing of molecules. This felt very real for me last month. I was naturally keeping to myself and alert of my proximity to my roommate. I felt intuitively there was some threat in being around him. Now, where this vibration or virus originates from is a mystery that we could speculate on further. Personally, I would say that it is most likely lab created and manifested through the power of ritual, but I believe that a virus requires a population body minds that would be receptive to it. So the enterprise of creating such a thing would have to be out of re-engineering from the evolutionary context of the present body-mind construct. Whatever this thing is, it would need to be recognized by our programming to have any ability to penetrate into it. I don't believe, therefore, that it is possible to create a contagious virus that wipes out the whole population. From a spiritual perspective, that would be like taking the easy way out. Life can't be defeated that way because life is everything. It would have to be a reflection of our collective corruption and go no further than that. I like this theory. Leaving my speculation aside, my overall hypothesis is that there is no truth to the conclusive explanations of cause and effect relationships that we ascribe to the way things are. Just different ways of looking at things, depending on our level of perception and what we choose to focus on. This is why I think the viruses aren't real brigade is missing the point. I totally agree. I think they are real and not real at the same time. Fuck, this is so Fortean as well. This is exactly what Fort would say. He says that in his book, and especially in the Book of the Damned. It's real and it's not real. And he always has this new hyphen. He always bitches about the hyphen things. He just throws a hyphen between two things all the time. Invisible, visible. Real, not real. For the purposes of a medical system or a person of tradition that understands things through the virus model, then they are very real as a construct that brings meaning to this phenomena of contagiousness. Interestingly, the same idea could be applied to many of the fringe issues that the conspiracy community often takes so literally that they become politicized. Like the shape of the earth, for example. Maybe it's round and flat at the same time. Who's to say it's not just a bunch of waves or particles? I think there's a tendency to take things literally and always pick a side, when it could be that there are 1,000 million ways of looking at reality, which all could be valid relative to our perception. Anyways, these are my thoughts. If you made this far, thank you for providing me with the opportunity to share. All the best, Christopher. Yeah, thanks. It is very Fortean. I love it. I agree in a lot of ways.
Substantively.
It's hard.
In
it's
a
hard
way
for
that
me
is
to-
important, meaningful, or considerable
There you go.
with regard to legal rights and duties.
There you go.
It achieved peak usage at the turn of the century, year 2000, and then it's down considerably.
Wow. Where did you find those stats?
Google Books.
Wow.
I mean, it really shot up around 1975 to 2000, and now it's back down. Another 50 years, it won't be a word again.
Too long. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I feel like substantially sort of took it over, you know?
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, it's I think it's hard for me to, like, I had this really long discussion with my buddy Mike again about staying in the middle of all this stuff, because he's kind of more on our side, but he was on the other side a little bit. Like, he ended up getting a jab, and he kind of doesn't agree with some of the stuff that we talk about, but he thinks that the people that are pushing back against us go too far, right? With the whole, and probably this is one example where they talk too much about, like, let's say the terrain. They put too much investment into the terrain theory, for example. Like, I've seen some people commenting in one of these Telegram groups too. They're arguing back and forth, and they're like, "Well, it's not real. It's just not there." And they're making fun. Like, they're saying, "Stop saying you got it," and all this. And it's like, look, I got sick from something that I never get sick from. Like, I never get the flu in general. I get small colds that don't last very long. I had something artificial. I believe that. And a lot of people I traveled with during when I got it. Over 20 people. How
did they all collaborate? Artificial?
What?
Did they all corroborate your artificial?
No, I don't know. I mean, I've heard people say that, but
I think you put the pussy on a pedestal.
Regardless of that, it's hard for me to visualize, and I do have time for the theory, but I don't think we need to. I think that just takes us away from the fight. You know, like, whether it's a germ or whether it's real or not, something is there. It's happening, right? I can't visualize how terrainly, like, how we would have vibratorily, frequency wise, got everybody at the same time would have picked up this frequency and got sick.
Oh yeah. No,
it's hard to.
There's definitely some germ stuff going on. 100%. 100%. But
like Fort would say, though, maybe it's both. Maybe, I don't want to say 100% to anything, because it could change.
100%.
The more evidence that comes,
120%.
Everything's fluid.
110.
Everything's drifting from one side to the next all the time.
I don't want to fight with anyone. I just want to plant some flowers that I can harvest in the fall.
There you go.
Do you still want to do your op, or are you running up on your Dungeons and Dragons now?
I'll tease it.
I've never seen a guy get so antsy as when Graham gets within 10 minutes of his Sunday night Dungeons and Dragons. We started this intro a bit late. We're now
I almost killed the whole. It's a serious part. I almost killed the whole party. So
we're at 5:56.
They had to put it this way. They had to wish their way out of this battle twice.
In what? Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah,
I'm wishing my way out already. I wish I never even heard about it. The Dungeons and Dragons people are trying to horn in on the Zoom. So I guess we'll get out of here now. One thing before we go, I know some of you guys know by now, this ain't a free show. I know there's 540 episodes there. They're all free. It's a value for show. What we're hoping you guys are getting some value from this show. It's adding some value to your life, to your commute, to whatever you're doing. And you can send some value back our way over at grimerica.ca/support. We couldn't do it without its supporters. If we didn't have the supporters, we'd have to go do something else, make more books, do something. But the supporters keep us around, keep us going, keep us flowing, keeps the bills paid. grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly today. A $5, $10, $50, you decide. It's up to you. It could even be a $1. You can make a one-time donation. You can go on Patreon. You can use cryptos. Email us if you want to use cryptos. I think I got to fix the website button again. I don't like that coin payments. Just email me. I'll give you our straight-up wallet addresses. We're into the crypto game a little bit right now, so we can actually accept cryptos straight across without going through any third parties of a couple different denominations. So if you guys could do that, you can also head over to grimericaoutlaw.ca, check out that podcast. We just got the 60th episode out there, so you can at least go back and listen to the last 33 of those. If you want more than that, you'll have to sign up for that Plus subscription, get those with its, get on that $6 a month, get those shows over there. 60 more shows, that comes out every Friday night. And then, of course, there's all the audiobooks over at adultbrain.ca. Use your adult brain today and get some of those esoteric classics of all time. We just added all the works of Charles Fort to that. And now we're going to start getting into some ancient Egypt stuff here this spring. It's all looking fantastic. I think that's about it. We'll let Graham do his D&D. Oh, Graham has to do the bio. We're still learning this. Bio time.
Yeah, so Meredith, so this is coming right from her innerintegration.com website. Just going to read some stuff from her bio here. She's a holistic? Yep. Holistic coach, author, and speaker, helping people to self-heal after toxic relationships. Her mission is to bridge the gap between trauma and purpose. She teaches the mindsets, the tools, and the actions to help others recover after relational trauma. So she had her own NDE experience in 2003, and that actually led her to pursue a new direction in life. And she's had extensive training in holistic healing arts, personal development for over a decade. And she's continually researching and training. The diversity of her methods spans from like the Ivy League education, kind of like what I was mentioning earlier on, to apprenticing with a mystic in the Andes Mountains of Peru. As a survivor of over 3 decades of psychological and sexual abuse, Meredith's specialty is a holistic approach to narcissistic abuse recovery. Her clients continually say that she gets it in a way that only someone who has been through it could. This is why she's coaching and her clients and video audience trusts in her expertise. So she's moved to, I'll just put the website here she's moved away from YouTube onto some other platforms because of YouTube's censorship. And the interesting part is this narcissistic abuse applies to families, personal relationships, governments, systemic abuse that we've been in relationships. So her work is very applicable to what's happening right now in the world. So check it out.
Check it out. Support the show. Enjoy the chat with Meredith Miller.
Meredith Miller, welcome to the Grimerica Show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this. I was reading your bio I found out afterwards, just by reading your bio, after we had communicated and brought you on, that you had sort of a transformative experience yourself, like an NDE thing. And I thought, oh my God, like so many people, so many guests we have on the show, on this Grimerica Show, have had these transformative experiences, like have had near-death experiences. And I thought, well, maybe we can start there, a little bit about your background, a little bit about that, and then we'll get into sort of some of your work and how it relates to current events.
Right on. You want to know about the near-death experience?
Well, I think so. Yeah, because we got to talk about it here. I mean, it's such we've had so many guests that have had big changes after that. So
yeah, I was living.
If that's okay.
I was living a life in the system, totally miserable. Hated my job, hated my life. And on a Halloween weekend, I was coming back from a party dressed in a disguise. And I got into a car accident coming off the highway really close to my house. And all I remember was a car swerved into my lane. My car went flying. I saw a green flash of light. And the next thing I knew, I was standing next to my car, looking down at my disguise and this wig and asking myself, who am I? Who am I? who am I? And this question began sort of this dark night of the soul that haunted me for years after. And it wasn't until 2.5 years later that I had this out of body experience in which I recovered all the memories of what happened in the near death experience in the car accident. But at the time, I was so spiritually dull and had no capability of remembering, grounding what happened, that it was just darkness. And there was so much darkness. For a long time, I got blamed for the car accident and I was angry and so many things happened. But when I went back years later, it had to do with the car. I had to get the car back from an abusive ex and all this thing happened. I laid down that night and there was a thunderstorm outside. And I'd been studying shamanic journeying. And the way that the rain was beating on the gutter outside, all of a sudden, something happened in my body and I left my body. I was still in the room at first, and I can feel that I was there in the room and I could feel everything in the room. I became everything but nothing in the room. So I felt like I was the futon I was laying on, and I can feel me laying on my chest. And then I was the floor and I felt the futon laying on me. And then I was the television and I felt the mug laying on my head. And then the bookcase and I was holding the books, and then I became the book sitting in the bookcase. And then I realized, wait, I'm not limited to this room. Anything is accessible to me in this moment. And so I said, what happened in that car accident? This question's been haunting me for years. And so I was taken all of a sudden to this, like, I flew out of my body. Like, I was already out of my body, but I flew into some other dimension. And all of a sudden, this lightning bolt came in through my head, and it started ricocheting off every part of my body that I'd ever felt pain. And it was like light speed. And every time it hit another part of my body, a memory would come up. And it was happening so fast. It was just like shuffling through all these memories and all this pain. And it's happened for probably over an hour. And then all of a sudden, there was this calmness. And then another lightning bolt came. And this time it was ricocheting off all these parts of my body. And the memories were like bliss. And some of the experiences I remember being of my life, and other experiences I didn't recognize or know. Was it other lifetimes? Was it me? What was it? And that went on for a really long time. And it was just so deeply peaceful. And then at one point I heard this sound, and it was like singing bowls and crystals. And I can't even explain it, but there was all these octaves of sound, and I understood that was me. It was like my energetic frequency. And so I asked, who am I? This was the question that was haunting me. Who am I? And I understood something, that I was something of a transformative effect in people's lives. I saw sort of this giant diamond shape with all these different facets. And then people and things would come by almost on a conveyor belt, and they looked like a Rubik's Cube all messed up. But as soon as they came in front of me, they just automatically rearranged themselves back into order and moved on. And it was an incredible experience. But I felt like I had to go through those 2.5 years of the dark night of the soul and all this spiritual healing in order to even be able to recover what had happened to me in that car accident and the near-death experience. And it was just absolutely incredible. And it really set me on a whole different life. Like, after the car accident, I quit my job. I started studying holistic healing. I made so many different changes in my life.
Wow. That's crazy. That's amazing.
I feel like I was given a choice, and I've heard other people say that too. And I feel like part of my contract was, I'm not coming back if my body isn't whole and healthy. I'm not coming back if I'm going to be completely messed up and unable to like live my life in the way that I want to. So I felt like that was part of the contract that I had made in order to come back.
So because you had lots of pain in your body prior to that?
So I had an illness, like the car accident was 2003. And in 2000, I got really sick. I just graduated from college. And all of a sudden, like, I couldn't get off the couch. I had no energy. I had so much pain, like in my abdomen, but I was so disconnected from my body that I couldn't really even tell you what was wrong. I just knew something was really wrong. And then I started going to the doctors, and they were giving me the runaround. And every time I went, it was a different diagnosis, and they never knew it was wrong. And after like 4 months, they finally told me it was all in my head.
Yeah.
And that I must be crazy. And then eventually, they realized that they needed to test my blood. This is the year 2000. It was a long time ago. They didn't have the magnetic resonance imaging and all that. So they tested my blood. They saw my white blood cell count was extremely high. They said, well, it could be cancer or leukemia or something like that. We should probably cut you open and start taking out lymph nodes. And I was like, whoa, this is not okay for me. This is absolutely not okay. I didn't trust these people. I felt like they were messing with my mind. And I walked out of there. And at the time, I was a complete atheist. I was raised Catholic, but I had to go clear to the other end of the spectrum, kind of defined like my middle path. So at the time, I didn't believe in anything, but I left the doctors going, that's not it. And I didn't know what I was talking to, but I just looked up and I was like, show me the way, show me what to do. I know that's not it. And I went back to the office, which is a couple blocks away, and I ran into one of my bosses. They're from Spain. And he said, so your new supervisor is coming from Spain, and she's going to talk about this weird diet. Supposedly it cured her cancer. And I was like, oh my God, like something magical is happening in this universe. And that was kind of the spark in the beginning of a long path of healing.
Wow. Okay. And then you went through so much education to get where you are now. I mean, it was I was just looking through your bio and all the courses and all the stuff. I mean, it's incredible. I heard you on Reiner Fulmick's, and it was one of my favorite of all of his interviews, just the way you succinctly talked about what we're going through right now as far as, trauma goes and this relationship we have to abusive people or institutions or governments. So, maybe just talk a little bit about the education that you went through all the way up, learning what you know now.
I studied Spanish in college, and that ended up serving me because I got to go to Latin America and study with some teachers there in in Mexico and Peru. I traveled to Spain on my own just to study with some people, but then I ended up studying Chinese medicine and hypnosis and a bunch of energy work like matrix energetics and theta healing and DNA activation, and then shamanism. And it just kind of kept leading me more and more into various different aspects of holistic healing. And then eventually I got into coaching. So I did hands-on healing for a very long time, but I kept moving around a lot, and that was really complicated because then you had to start a whole new clientele. And then the whole online thing started kicking off, and I realized I could do online holistic coaching. So I kind of redirected towards that, but all the time still studying just how to be a better coach and practitioner. And then in the last 2 years, after all this stuff changed in the world, I really dived in deep to trauma. So I had been working in narcissistic abuse recovery for a while, which is a form of trauma. It's relational trauma. And I realized that definitely had to do with what's going on in the world. But I wanted to learn more about trauma healing in general, because I'm seeing that's going to be a huge fallout down the road. It already is, but we're still in it. So we haven't even seen the fallout yet.
So how do you want to go from here? Do you want to get into that? I have some sort of personal questions about healing and recovery as well, but do you want to continue talking about the trauma that we're going through now, or where would you like this to go?
You can drive.
Okay. So,
oh boy.
Yeah. I just don't know if I want to dive into the deep end of the pool right now with what's going on in the world,
Yeah, let's get it. Just jump in the deep end.
All right. So, look, we're in a state now where it seems like we're either fearful of COVID, let's say, and I do want to sort of exit this and get down to more of a personal level too, and talk about how we can sort of heal from abusive relationships or trauma, or not fall into this trauma ourselves. Because what I'm about to get to here is that I feel like we're in fear of either COVID or the tyranny that's happening because of COVID. And I know there's a lot of us trying to, yeah, well, that could be part of the tyranny.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
I mean, and it might not be fear of and there's a bunch of us that are trying to stay in the middle, right? And not be fearful and trying to be conscious of it. And we know that we're all brainwashed. I mean, I say that's one of the big differences between the people that want to push all this stuff on us and the people that are resisting is, I think, we know we're brainwashed and we admit it. And we try and deal with it. And the other side doesn't seem to get that we're all brainwashed. So how do I turn that into a question for you? I guess we're all susceptible to fear and trauma right now. So how do we recognize that, and how do we get out of that, I guess? And how do we handle the other side, that people that want to push their authoritarian measures on us, I guess? I mean, I don't know how deep we want to get right away, but it kind of gives something to start with.
I think it's really hard when you're in the picture to recognize what's going on. And I think that's why it's so hard for people to recognize what's happening, whether they're afraid of the COVID and that's what's ruling their life, or they're afraid of the tyranny and that's what's ruling their life, or what's even happening. And so like when you look at a person in an abusive relationship, they sort of have an idea something's off, it doesn't quite make sense, which is something very similar that a lot of people started to sense in 2020. Maybe not at the very beginning, because I think we were all cautious and concerned. And then, in March of 2020, the data started coming in from America. And then, people started, okay, so this seems like we've overblown our reaction to this. And now something really seems like it's off, because we're still going down this trajectory, even though the evidence changed. So that sense that something is off is usually the first sign of a relational trauma, meaning the kind of trauma that takes place between human beings, whether it's an interpersonal relationship or whether it's in a system like a family, a workplace, a social group, or society in general. So I think that's our first clue. And that's always something that abuse victims will recognize in retrospect. Yeah, I always felt like something was off. But when you're in it, it's really hard to see that, because you're in a state of cognitive dissonance. Part of you kind of sees the truth, and something just doesn't feel right. And then another part of you really wants to believe in the fantasy. So in a partnership, it might be the fantasy is this is the love of my life, but the reality is that this person is abusing me. In society, the fantasy might be the government wants the best for us and they want to protect us, and everything that they're doing is for our good because they're telling us that. But reality is showing us exactly the opposite. So when you're in that state of cognitive dissonance where you're trying to hold two completely opposing ideas, opinions, realities, that's so stressful for the mind, for the brain. So it short circuits into denial. It's kind of like the circuit breaker in your house. So like you're running the vacuum cleaner and someone turns on the hair dryer and something else, and then the fuse goes, right? And you have to flip the switch. The human nervous system is kind of like that. When it gets overwhelmed with stress, it shuts down. So when it's too much, when the overwhelming stress of trying to reconcile these two completely opposing points of view is so stressful, the mind just short circuits into denial. And then the person goes into states of defensiveness. So when you try to present evidence to them that they're in an abusive relationship, or that something strange is going on in the world or with the government, they will immediately reject that because they're in that state of denial and defensiveness. It also makes it very difficult to think clearly because there's a brain fog that happens, the cognitive dissonance. So if we look even in society, words like social distancing, this creates cognitive dissonance because we have two words that mean the opposite things. When we hear social, the nervous system thinks safe, because as mammals, we were programmed to seek safety and healing in the comfort of the presence of other mammals. So when we hear social and distancing and we're taught this is what's safe, but distance is the opposite of social, it immediately puts the brain into a state of cognitive dissonance. And so we've seen so many of these phrases and words that have been used, or even the bombardment of information with mixed messaging.
Yes, I was going to say that. Truth and lies all together.
Yes. So
the default position becomes just follow the narrative, because it gets so confused. I don't know what's true anymore. So I'm just following what I'm told.
Exactly. It's so hard to think. And that's something that I went through a mushroom journey in 2020 when I was trying to get through the fear that I was facing, because I knew I had to get out of that fear if I wanted to help other people. And what I saw was like the herd marching toward the slaughterhouse, and how it's just so hard to think. It's just so hard to lift your head up. and even try to think differently, because the whole herd is moving that way and the safety is in the herd. And so that's where people were going.
And I think there's another thing that keeps people in there, which you talked about in one of your videos on hope. Because when I was in a relationship, what kept me in it that I shouldn't have been in was this faint hope. You know, the hope that would keep cycling around to like, okay, well, it's going to get better and it's going to be okay. And it's the thing that you talked about as well, that sort of fantasy part, right? That hope that your fantasy will avail itself. And I think people have this hope that, like, because they keep being spoon fed little tidbits of carrots and, oh, just do this now, just do that now, and it'll all go back to normal, or we'll get through this. So they have this little bit of hope that's spoon fed. And then,
exactly.
Yeah, does that keep people in this sort of state?
Totally. So in the relationship, the target wants to get back to the good times. And so that's like at the very beginning, when it was the seduction phase and it was the love bombing and everything seemed amazing. It wasn't. It was all part of the manipulation, but the person perceived it as everything they ever wanted or something that made them very happy. And they want to get back to the good times. In society, people want to get back to normal. It's the same thing as the victim wanting to go back to the good times. So we see people doing exactly what you said, like they're going for those carrots, but the goalpost keeps moving, because that's how it always is with the abuse. It keeps escalating. And as soon as you get to that next goalpost, now it moves again and again. So we see that like with the boosters, for example.
Yeah.
So what do people do to inoculate themselves from that sort of cycle? And I mean, is it by design? Is this a cycle that people can fall into as some sort of protective mechanism? Like, why do individuals fall into that narcissistic response, and can a government sort of fall into the same pattern accidentally or in response to trauma as opposed to malevolence?
I have a friend who's a doctor, and he says we should always assume incompetency before malice, right? And my brain is wired to look for the malice first, because I grew up in that. It was everything I ever knew. So I recognize I have that default programming, but I think most people want to see the good in other people, want to see the good in the government, that they have our best intentions at hand. And maybe some of them do. It certainly seems that this is orchestrated. Even if we look at the rehearsals that they've done and the clues that they've left us before 2020 even happened, they've basically been telling us this all along. Probably a lot of the leaders are compromised for something that they've done. And so they're in a position in which, so when you have multiple abusers in a system, let's say a family system, you have multiple abusers, there's a hierarchy, there's an alpha, it's like a dog pack, right? So they know their place in the pack. So let's say the more severe abusers are driving things, and then there's other abusers there, but they all know their place. And this works as long as everybody's serving the same goal. And so what one abuser will do to get the compliance of the other abuser is to hold something against them that they did, but they don't want other people to know, or that they could get in trouble for. Sometimes they bribe them with other resources like money or sex or something else. Probably we're seeing, this sorts of thing happen too, where people are being blackmailed, so to speak, of things that they've done, or offered bribes of money for their local areas if they put into place all of these regulations. Maybe some people are just completely clueless of what's happening, but they're in so deep. It's kind of like, you make one bad decision in life, or you go along with something, you make a bad decision, and that leads you down this trajectory of this like runaway train that it seems like you can't get off of, more and more and more bad decisions. So maybe some of them just fell into something like that. But it certainly does seem that at the very top, there's some kind of orchestration going on. And, when we talk to people around the world who've been through narcissistic abuse, they've been in these kinds of relationships and situations, they all say the same thing. It's like as if these people read the same manual. How is that possible? Is there a book that teaches them how to do this kind of abuse? But I think that actually exemplifies the spiritual dimension of things, where, these humans are actually feeding something else. I don't know what that is, some kind of demonic force. And maybe that's why it's the same around the world in different cultures, countries, different socioeconomic status, different genders, all around the world. The patterns are exactly the same of the abuse. When we look at the interpersonal relationships and when we look around the world at what's happening in the response to COVID, it's like the exact same things are happening. So I think there's also a spiritual dimension. I think that explains why this is able to happen and look so similar across the world when these people maybe don't even know each other. Maybe they've never talked to each other. Maybe it's not a conspiracy, so to speak, but they're all tuned into the same frequency.
Well, that's even scarier than it being a conspiracy, than an overt conspiracy in some ways.
I think it's probably a combination of all of that.
Yeah. Do you have a follow-up on that, Darren, at all? Or?
Well, no, I guess the other one was just how people avoid it. Because some people seem to be able to avoid it and others on both sides seem to not be able to pull up.
So the thing I think is that when people have gone through trauma and the very difficult, dark life experiences, and they've come out of that, they've healed from that, they're moving forward, they're transforming their life, they have kind of a superpower of recognizing this kind of stuff and not falling into it, even if they don't consciously know about it, even if they've never studied it, they just know something's wrong and they're not going along. But people who have unresolved trauma, that makes them very easy targets for manipulation. So I think the clue is that we need to look inside and heal the traumas, heal the unresolved traumas inside each of us. Because as each of us individuals takes on the self-responsibility of cleaning up our own stuff, that spreads. So as more people do that, we individuals form society and the collective. So I think there's really no healing out there. There's no fixing the system. There's no stopping the thing that's happening out there. I think the change comes from inside.
And then metaphysically it spreads?
Yes.
So are we all traumatized at some level or another?
I think so. That's what a lot of trauma experts say too. And sometimes they're just things that people don't even realize are trauma. Last year, I was talking to a man from Iran, and he grew up during the Iran-Iraq war. And so when he was like 5 or 6 years old, bombs were falling just a few blocks away from him. And when we were talking about trauma, he said, this thing you call trauma, this is life.
Yeah.
Right. So for him, like that's how his brain registered bombs falling a few blocks away in your childhood. That's just life. Right. And that's a very overt example. There could be so many kinds of traumas that don't even look like traumas, that we don't even realize were traumatic to us. And the experts say that what makes it a trauma or not, because two people can go through the same kind of experience as children, as adults. What makes it traumatizing is if no one is there for you.
Right.
So there's that social healing thing again, right? Where we heal through co-regulation, through the presence of one another, through eye contact, looking at the face, through physical touch. So like, let's say you're a kid and something horrible happens to you and your mom or someone holds you and they just hold you and make you feel like you're safe and everything's going to be okay. Probably you're not going to have the post-trauma from that. But if you're a kid, you go through something like sexual abuse, your parents don't believe you, they don't protect you, they deny it, they say it didn't happen, that becomes a post-trauma.
Fascinating, because I've thought about these other cultures in the past that have been at war all the time. Some of these wars go on for hundreds of years or decades, and how did they cope with this trauma? But like you said, maybe there was a way where if they were all together as a society or family, or they have these structures that support each other, even though they're, always in this sort of potential for death or destruction, they have support that we don't have now.
especially because the whole premise of everything is social distancing.
Yeah.
So the epidemic is disconnection.
Right.
Connection is how we heal. And not just how we heal, but it's how we manage homeostasis in the body.
So is that like a self-fulfilling prophecy sort of thing? So if like, say you're in an office tower that freaked the fuck out right in the beginning and sent everyone home, and you've been working from home ever since, and maybe you're single too, so you're sort of just really isolated compared to someone in my industry that's sort of been, you know, other than annoyances for the most part, has been unaffected. You know, it's business as usual. You got to go to work. It don't like my industry hasn't shut down. Construction industry hasn't shut down a day here. You know, we've had different rules to follow the whole time. And the general consensus in my entire industry is, and has been for the most part for the entire time, is this is crazy. This is too much. And I wonder if part of that is because we got to hang on to that sense of normality right from the beginning, and it might be different for those people who didn't get to.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. And so it varies from location to location. You're talking about a work industry, but also we can compare areas. Like I live in Texas. It's a very different experience than New York City, San Francisco, right? We don't see as much fear here. When I walk around, I don't see a lot of people with masks, even nowadays. Most people are having normal interactions. It's almost like normal life is happening.
Whether you're jabbed or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so different than up here.
It's very different.
I mean, maybe not for Darren. I mean, Darren's almost like in, you know, his life is kind of in that. But I mean, I know people personally that they're starting to lose it because they can't do anything. They're trying to stick to their principles, and
you have an extra bedroom.
Well, the only difference is you can test here. I mean, it's still, and that could change at any minute. Yeah.
I got the test covered, brother. I got a system.
It's so weird. It's so crazy what we're going through. Fuck. Sorry, what were you saying?
Trudeau.
Oh, right.
Unbelievable. The other day, he was on some talk show and he was talking about unvaccinated people. And he was basically saying, est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens? Like, should we tolerate these people? That's shocking. That kind of thing should really be shocking people at this point. It's so astounding that it's not. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I think Trudeau said in English that the charter says that it's not okay for them to be attacking the fundamental freedoms of people, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. I mean, at this point, it's getting so overt. And that's the thing about abuse. You know, there's overt forms and covert forms. The covert is the more sophisticated model. It's just more hidden. It looks pretty. They say all the right things, but then they're deceiving you. It's snake talking. And so every covert situation ends up becoming more overt as it progresses. And that's what we're seeing now, is the turn into the more overt abuse. And the shocking thing is how it's not shocking people. And that tells you how deep they are in the brainwashing. And I
mean, I heard you talk about that with Reiner about how to wake people up. I mean, it has to be a big dose of reality. I can't remember the exact words you used.
It's a spontaneous event.
Right.
So we can't help somebody else to wake up.
No, like it has to happen on their own, right? Yeah.
It does. It's like a divine intervention. It's a spontaneous thing that happens. And I call it a frying pan to the head because that's what it feels like. It's something so drastic and shocking that the person can no longer not see the truth, the reality that's in front of them. It's like their whole reality shatters.
So, I mean, Trudeau saying something like that might be enough for some people, you would hope.
You would hope. But I think what it shows is that how there hasn't been, well, at least I'm not Canadian, so I haven't been seeing what's going on in the public discourse there, but I don't see a lot of people talking about it.
Well, the problem is no one speaks French outside of Quebec, and we don't really get along with them. We don't really get along with them. Oh, they're technically part of Canada.
We give them lots of money. And,
I mean, against their better judgment or our better judgment, it's it's a tedious and somewhat abusive relationship at best. Yeah. And with Alberta, where we are being especially abused, we are the redheaded stepchild of the country, but not quite redheaded enough to get out of the vaccine passports,
or not quite redheaded enough to not give money to the rest of the country.
Well, that's part of the redheaded. Yeah, that's part of the.
Yeah. We're kind of like the Texas of Canada.
I was thinking that.
Except with no freedom.
But minus the freedom, you know.
Well, we could test. I guess that's a freedom. I mean, it's opened up a whole little market for me. I'm not gonna. I'm an entrepreneur. Texas does seem better though. I mean, Montana's right there. That's the trick. Is Montana's right there? Because you should try and go down. We've gone through. I will. I heard that. I'll talk to you about it later. But I heard that the requirements have changed for over the border travel. So in a good way or a bad way? In a good way. Yeah. Ooh. We'll talk about it. So we got a couple events going on in the States. So 5 weeks away. 5 weeks from tomorrow, we're out of here. We're going to Arizona. Oh yeah, you would actually love the event that we're doing with. It's kind of like, it's called Magic on the Mountain, and it's kind of about some modern shamanism and some esoteric hermetic wisdom, along with some sort of Napoleon Hill, like outwitting the devil type stuff. By three different guests that are coming to share their wisdom and their experience with us.
Did I hear that y'all were going to be in Texas at some point too? I heard that on one of your.
Darren goes there.
I go to Texas from time to time. I got some buddies in Bandera. I guess just outside of San Antonio. I don't think it's far from Austin either. I haven't been to Austin yet, but the next time I go down, I'm going to go check out Austin.
I mean, Texas is huge, so it's hard.
I want to get out of here now, but I can't get on a plane.
Yeah.
And unless I drive to the States first, and fucking flying anywhere out of Montana is a pain.
Right.
So I'd have to drive to at least Spokane to not spend a fortune. So for now, I'll just drive. I mean, I got so many trips this year that I don't need to go to Texas this year, but maybe next year. And hopefully by then I can just get on a plane. I mean, I got to go to Egypt and Hawaii coming up, but I'm planning to just drive to the States for both of those flights. Like, I'll just drive to Denver and fly out of there. Like, Denver is one of those hub sort of places. Seattle probably too. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out where's it.
But I mean, it's hard to believe we're even talking like this.
I know.
You know, this is where we're at, right? I mean,
I know.
It's insane.
That's it.
So there, so on one hand, you're like, oh yeah, it hasn't really changed much for me, but I got to drive to the States to fly to Egypt or Hawaii. So
that's just life, man. I mean, my great grandpa didn't have the option of going fucking anywhere you walk, so I'm just not going to complain too much.
Oh yeah, no, that's good. No, I mean we've been talking about it over and over, and especially this waking up people, because they're, how much of a pushback are we going to get from the people that are in that, let's say 30% that Desmond talks about, the mass formation, right? How far are they going to push back against us when Trudeau himself, the leader of this country, is calling us misogynist or dirty or racist, or what? How do we deal with those hooligans? Is pretty much what he's saying. I mean,
right.
And then how far are they going to come?
Maybe it'll be like the new punk rock soon.
Yeah,
we'll be like punk rockers.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But anyways, I mean, we've talked about giving up on waking people up. Like, it's not people that listening to the show are not going to just all of a sudden wake up, because the people that are listening to the show have already kind of reached a certain point. And we can't really get into that percentage of the people. Some people, there's a percentage, and I kind of wanted your 98%. Thoughts on what Desmond says about the mass formation, which what I wanted to mention to you as well is I'm reading this book from Charles Fort right now called The Book of the Damned, and it's about this pushback against dogmatic scientism and all that. And he's talking about mass formation at least 3 times in his book from the early 1900s.
Wow.
So he was talking about mass formation back then.
As an excuse for a UFO sighting?
No, just of the way science and astronomy handles.
Is that what that thing would have been, where the whole football stadium seen that UFO that time? Was that a mass formation?
No, that's the opposite. That's a mass awakening.
Oh. So how do you decide?
No, because the mass formation would have been all those people that didn't see anything, right? They're denying that. The mass formation would have been probably them denying that sighting.
I was thinking today about how it'd be nice to wake up all the drifters, the 98%, or at least a bunch of them. And then I was thinking, that'd make my shit harder. I mean, maybe a few more percent, but there's got to be a tipping point where it just gets saturated with too many go-getters.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know. It's not up to us, anyways. It's
not up to us.
But there is a percentage of people in the middle that they see what is happening and they just don't know what to do. And we don't even really know what to do. I mean, how do we, besides sort of preparing for different scenarios? I mean, and besides just, handing out leaflets on the street or trying to, shout and tell people what's going on, but they won't really get it anyways. So like what Desmond was saying is the 30 and the 40 and the 30, let's say. I don't really agree with those percentages. I think it's more like 10 or 20 and 40 and 40 kind of thing. But I guess what is my question in all this? How does trauma and what you're talking about with the abusive relationship fit into that mass formation? Or is it the same thing? Are people that are in their trauma stuck in the mass formation?
So the mass formation, the delusional psychosis, it's also called, that takes place in a system. So in an interpersonal relationship, that's the micro example. And then you start getting into systems, which have the same dynamics, but then they take on additional characteristics because the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So the best thing is to think about a family, because that's the basic structure of a system. So let's say you wake up in that family and you realize there's abuse going on. It happened to you. You try to talk to people. Maybe you find a few allies in the family who said, that happened to me too, or I saw that happen to you, and they validate your reality and they see it. But the vast majority of people are not going to see it. They're going to attack you. They're going to smear you. They're going to move away from you. So it ends up getting that in order to save your sanity and your health and your peace and your well-being, that you end up exiting the system, going no contact with pretty much everybody in the system, because a system, an abusive system, whether we're talking about a family or a society, is made up of abusers and enablers. The key point to talk about here is the enablers. When we look at history, we talk about the abusers and the victims, but we often don't talk about the enablers. We don't talk about the people that allow it to happen, that do the bidding of the abusers, that turn on each other, right? And that's really important to talk about. And I think that might be why we leave it out of history, because that's where the power is. The system doesn't work. If there's an abuser and has no enablers, the abuser is powerless to do anything. It's the enablers that maintain that entire system.
And so this is what we're dealing with, yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about those percentages, we're talking about enablers too.
So, I mean, it's so funny you say that about the exiting the system, because that's really what we feel like doing. I mean, I'm not going to speak for Darren, but like in general, that community, this is the people that are sort of wondering what to do. It's like, I don't even, you get to the point where you don't even want to be in the system. Like, I don't even want to go out and eat at a restaurant with a bunch of people wearing their masks. Or, for example, I don't even want to be in the system. I just don't have any desire to talk small talk with people that are sort of participating in this.
Exactly. And that's really the best thing we can do, is opt out as much as possible. It's really hard to leave that system right now because there's no alternative. And I think that's what's going to be starting to be born now. It's like a parallel society.
Yes.
Media, banking, schools, education, absolutely every
medical
part of society, everything. Yeah. Because those who no longer want to participate in that, or those who are getting kicked out and canceled, and all of that, they need to find some other home. So I think what we're going to see now, I think with the bridge, the gap between where we are now and these two parallel systems, I think this year, this is going to start to happen. We're going to see the separate systems forming. I think that gap right now, in order to close that gap, is people fully accepting reality. Because even if we're awake and we're like, but maybe we'll kind of go back to normal, because the truth is coming out, right? People are paying attention, right? And because you've seen all this truth that's coming out now, but what are you seeing? You're seeing policies as if that didn't happen. More lockdowns, more vax-abs, more policies, even though more truth is coming out showing that none of this is necessary. So I think some people are still a little bit in the cognitive dissonance, hoping things will kind of just go back to normal. So maybe we won't, invest our energy in that. But I think it's probably really wise that we do. I don't know if you've read Ayn Rand. She wrote a book called Atlas Shrugged. Fantastic, and many amazing insights in there. But one of them was that this group of people with bright minds started becoming disillusioned with society the way that it was. It was falling apart because these inept, corrupt, abusive people were running things. And so they ended up starting to exit society and forming a separate parallel society that they called Atlantis, which was hidden in the mountains. And so their society was based on the exchange of real value. It was based on no man exists for the sake of another man, and that everything is based on value exchange. So there was no entitlements or free riding. Everybody contributed something to the society, and they earned a living based on that. And the interesting thing at the core of her fictional society was this man named John Galt, who created this free energy technology. And I think that is exactly what we need in this parallel system that we're going to create, is some kind of free energy technology. This kind of stuff has been coming out for a long time, and governments always squash that because they want to be able to charge a lot of money. They want the power. Right. So if we come up with the energy, because that's going to be one of the next crises that they're going to engineer now, is the energy crisis. So if we have the free energy, we can figure out everything else. So for the scientists and the people who are becoming disenchanted with that whole system, who want to actually create something different, we need the energy, whoever has those skills.
Have you seen Thrive 2 at all? Have you talked to Foster Gamble?
Oh no, I saw the first one.
Oh yeah, you got to see the second one. It's incredible. Yeah, it's their whole journey about going to talk to these people that have submitted their designs for free energy and all that kind of stuff, and they focus on a few of the special cases that seem like they're doing everything they say they're doing, and they go and visit them, and it's a really great movie as far as staying out of all the kind of global politics, and it's a very holistic sort of movie based on following nature's principles,
Nice.
with Nassim Harriman's work
Foster
again and
Gamble.
all that. Yeah, Foster Gamble.
Not
yeah.
Procter Gamble.
No, I said Foster. I started with Procter and then I said Foster Gamble. Yeah,
Nassim was talking about that mass formation. He didn't use that word. A long time ago, I went to one of his events, but he was talking about how there's this consensus, in science or in physics, where they just agree on the weight of was it the nucleus or the neutron of the nucleus? Something about this. I'm sorry, I'm
the
not
proton.
a scientist.
No, the proton. I think
proton. That was it.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how they just made up a number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the mass formation that Fort was talking about in his book. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And then the problem is it'll just stays like that. This whole way until it shifts and morphs into something else eventually. But it just always transitions into something else. Eventually. Yeah. But at the time it's dogmatic, and it's the, what does he call it? He calls it the now I'm going to gap out on the what he calls it, but I'll if I think about that, I'll come back to it. It's what does he call it? I can't think of it. Damn it.
Dogmatism.
Well, yeah, in general, but he's got another special word for it. Like, remember I was saying it upstairs. I can't think of it.
Interesting.
I've only narrated it like 500 times in the last 5 days, and I can't remember it.
Atlas Shrugged could have done without the whole speech, I think. Or
the John Galt speech?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like 4.5 hours. Come on. Come on. I mean, it's longer than some books. It's longer. The John Galt speech is longer than Fahrenheit 451. Is that what that book's called? Am I thinking of the right book?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, another good one.
It's so interesting, though. All of those dystopian novels that came out mostly in the aftermath of World War II, what was going on in the collective consciousness that people around the world were writing novels basically describing exactly what's happening now. We're kind of in some kind of intersection of all of those novels. Brave New World, have you read that one too?
Yeah.
That girl from the Australian internment camp that the girl that was forced in there, you probably saw the video.
Yeah.
She said that when she was getting very anxious, she asked if she can go for a walk or a run outside, and they wouldn't let her. They made her stay in, but they offered her Valium. I mean, that's straight out of Brave New World. Take a gram and don't give a damn. And she said that even like the PR around those camps in Australia, it's like a holiday. Again, right out of Brave New World. Take 2 grams and have a holiday.
That's crazy.
It is.
The name of the camp is like it's a very positive type name. I can't remember what the name of that camp is now. We talked about it before on the show. See, I'm losing my memory again here.
Some kind of euphemism.
Yeah, like New Land Camp or some like Sunshine Creek Lodge or something.
Sounds lovely. I'll take 14 nights.
Yeah.
I can't. It's so refreshing to hear you talk about all this stuff, because like when I heard you talk on Reiner about the trauma and how educated you were, and then you're bringing up all these other conspiracies that we talk about, but it's just so refreshing to hear somebody that you're not aware of yet open to all the stuff that we discuss on the show. That's great.
It's awesome y'all are talking about this stuff too.
Oh, it's so refreshing. Do you have any questions?
FEMA's going to do a nuclear bomb response test on January 6th.
Really?
Do you think
January
that means
6th? What?
Yeah.
Do they have to pick that date?
I know, right?
It's just unbelievable.
Maybe stay away from the city centers that day.
Yeah.
What day is that? Is that a weekend?
It's coming up.
Thursday?
It's
Thursday?
2 days from
Yeah,
now.
Thursday.
Ooh, I'm taking that day off already. Great. That worked out. I'm making apple strudels.
Nice.
Yeah, a nice little Thursday.
I got a question. I did want to
Okay.
ask about, because I know you've talked about this in your videos too, but the victimhood culture that we're in right now, and taking responsibility. And I think that's part of the reason why the people that have been through the dark night of the soul or addiction or had to go through trauma and come out the other side sort of accept, I think, responsibility over their actions and their behavior. And you want to talk about how that's played a role, like how this new it seems like there's a victimhood culture there that seems to be enabling this whole thing to happen. The cancel culture, the people that are now, pointing their fingers at people that aren't following the rules and all this. I mean, it feels like it's because they're just projecting all this stuff on other people.
Yeah. And this has been a formation of a very long process, like decades and decades of programming and social engineering, the infantilization of society, because that keeps people stuck in the victimhood.
Yeah.
And they want people there because if people accept self-responsibility for their life and their choices and they make that commitment, that's empowerment. Self-responsibility is empowerment. So they make it desirable to remain a victim, which actually Ayn Rand wrote about in that book, Atlas Shrugged, too. She said, because when you live in that state of victimhood, you're blameless for the consequences of your actions, right? So they make it enticing to be blameless, for what they do, and enticing to be a victim and to gain status and sympathy and other entitlements for being a victim. So it kind of just kills a person's drive in life. And I think as humans, like, we're here to kind of struggle. And through that struggle, we find our purpose and we find meaning in life. And let's say the government provides UBI, the universal basic income, and now people don't work, they don't struggle. Then what? Right? There's no more drive. There's no meaning in life at that point. And I think that's really dangerous. So what we see is that there's all this programming to keep people stuck in the infantilization, because then they also have a rescue fantasy. They don't take responsibility for their life. They're not changing anything in their life. And they are just waiting for some savior, whether it's a politician or a messiah or whoever, to come and save them from their life. Maybe it's a partner or someone who's just going to provide for them so they don't have to take responsibility for their life.
Yeah.
Are most people even hoping for that? I mean, I feel like most people don't even want that. They just want to, they're not even thinking about life at that level. It's just like, they're just caught in the tide. They're just, Monday to Friday to, Friday's poker night, and then Saturday's pizza night, and then it's Sunday, back to work tomorrow. And I mean, in a lot of ways, taking control of, and I mean, I'm privileged in a lot of ways because I have, a lot of things going for me, but I didn't mean that to come out that way, but it did. But I mean, in a lot of ways, just picking some place you want to be in a year or 3 months or 6 months or 5 years or all of the above is enough to at least start taking some control over your life instead of just bitching about how shitty it is all the time, or indirectly, usually, this shitty job, this shitty car, these shitty shoes, and right now especially. And I don't think the negativity on either side does us any favors. Like when I was just pissed off at all the time and up against it all the time, it was just like, I don't know, if I was checking my blood pressure, it was probably higher. And I'll still get it up. I mean, if the cops want to have a conversation about rights, or if I need to cross the border and I have, the border guard is probably getting an unfair amount of abuse from me. But it's better not to be there all the time, because it's just like, I don't know. It really devolved for a while there. I feel like we had the high ground in a lot of ways, but I see that sort of disappearing of late, and it really devolving into an us versus them again.
That's the danger, the divide and conquer. That's the tactic that every abuser uses, is to divide people. They have to keep people divided, us versus them, so that they can't unite. And so when we fall into those traps, and it's all set up that way, it's set up like a binary system. Like if you have this, you agree with this talking point, let's say, or you fall into this, you're pro this or anti that. And so they kind of set it up so that you're almost forced to fall into one side or the other. And they make it almost impossible for you to be independent thinker or have thoughts that maybe contain both sides or pieces of truth from both sides. So as soon as you say something, if a person on this side says, okay, well, you didn't say something on my list of talking points, therefore you must be that side. And this is all very destructive behavior. But unfortunately, we humans have not grown up out of this infantilization phase yet to recognize what's happening and that we're being played.
And we're playing ourselves.
We are.
So is that like, I guess that's sort of the elephant in the room, is the self-responsibility and the self-destruction and the self-entitlement.
It is, because it's that commitment to self-responsibility that changes everything. That's the threshold out of the victimhood and into the rest of your life. Like at that point, you have the confidence that you can figure it out. Whatever it is, you're going to take the responsibility and figure it out. When you're in the victimhood, it's just, I can't. I need somebody else to do for me.
Or it's somebody else's fault that I'm here, which implies that I can't get myself out of here.
Exactly.
Indirectly, I guess. I mean, I guess you still could, but if it's all your shit, it's easier to shovel it. Maybe it stinks less. It stinks more at first, probably. Maybe the whole time. What do you think?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes. Where can our listeners track you down if they want to learn more?
So I stopped uploading to YouTube and all the other mainstream social media sites, but I did just start uploading some clips from my recent interviews on Rumble and on Brighteon. And they can find me with Meredith Miller on those sites. And then I also just started Substack and Getter.
Oh, wow.
Just started like today and yesterday. And also I write an email about every month to my list. So if people go to my website, innerintegration.com, there's a place they can enter their email to get on my newsletter list.
It looks like you have a YouTube plaque back there. That must have been a tough decision to leave YouTube.
It was a really difficult decision. Like really difficult, because I had spent years building that. But at this point, I just feel like people haven't realized yet in history, when we look at the people who were censoring and silencing and burning books and all of that, those were never the good guys in history. And so I think people don't realize that all of those mainstream sites are obsolete now because they've taken that side of censorship and silencing and controlling the narrative. And I just didn't want to participate in that anymore. I wanted to leave the library of content that I have up there as long as they don't delete me, because that'll still serve people over time, but I just don't want to keep contributing to that. I don't want to be a part of that. And I didn't even realize that there were these alternatives starting to be developed now, other sites that people are moving to so they can share freely what they think, and that's really interesting too, the whole censorship thing, because it's the reality control, right? Because if they control what we say, then they control what we think, and then they control the reality that we perceive. And eventually, just like in Orwell's 1984, people get to the point where they can't even think about reality because they only taught these words and to think within this frame of mind.
Good. That's great that you did that. Good for you. I mean, it's such a perfect meme. You just said it. And it's hard to believe that hasn't gotten through to the masses, that the people that are on the side of censorship and burning books and all this they're never the good guys, right? I mean, when has that ever served us? And people we've had this come up with my family and some close friends and stuff, where they're talking to the friends that they're having these open conversations about, trying to kind of wake them up, because some people will talk about it, but they have no clue of the censorship. They don't even know that it exists. Like there's such a bubble in Canada here, at least, and with the mainstream sort of narrative, that they don't even know that the censorship is happening. And you give them examples and they just don't even get it. They won't even acknowledge it.
I think, this is the thing that got me in 2020. When doctors are being censored during a pandemic, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. And that was pretty obvious. That was one of the most obvious ones, right? It was that whole, the frontline doctors came out, shut him down. Mm-hmm.
Oh. Also, the grid almost went down.
The grid,
that would have been a major problem too.
Yeah. Well, I do have one question before we let you go about just personal healing from abusive relationships. It's probably a pretty general question, and you may have answered it already in the general narrative. But people that didn't realize that they're in a relationship, like maybe on more of a personal level, not the system so much or the family so much. But either how to get out of those relationships, and this is probably like a huge question, but just summarize or whatever, or if you've gotten out, how to sort of maybe take steps to heal from that abusive relationship, whether it's not NPD or BPD. I know there's some overlaps there. Hard to tell the difference sometimes.
Yeah. I think the very first thing is to relentlessly face the truth. So as soon as a person starts to realize something's wrong, this is abusive, this is toxic, it's not okay, relentlessly facing the truth. Because you want to start to opt out or unsubscribe from that reality. So when you're in an abusive relationship or even a family system, there's a reality construct, which is like the narrative that they're selling us in society. And everyone is subscribed to that. So even when you're in a one-on-one relationship, you're fully subscribed to the narrative and the reality of the abuser. You need to start unsubscribing from that. You need to start living in your reality, owning your reality, and not letting the other person make you self-doubt, because that will keep a person stuck. And, they say the average is 7 times that a victim will return to an abuser, and if not to the same abuser, then to other abusers and repeat the same story. So I was asking myself a few weeks ago, is that going to be the magic number in society? Like, what is the 7 times? Is it 7 shots? Like, is it 7 lockdowns? Like, what is the magic number going to be?
7th wave. Yeah. 7th wave. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. And then how do you avoid relentlessly face the truth to avoid getting back in those as well?
To face the truth, to get out of that, and then to start facing the truth about yourself, right? Because when it's kind of like an addiction to get caught in these abusive relationships, you're not addicted to the abuse, you're not addicted to the person, you're not even addicted to the relationship, you're addicted to the feeling that you get, particularly the feeling that you got at the very beginning when they were pretending like everything was amazing, right? So in any addiction, we tell ourselves lies. Where's the lie? And that's where we have to get honest with ourselves and start doing a deep, deep dive into what are the lies that we're telling ourselves? Because whatever those lies are, that's what makes us a perfect target for someone who comes in and tells us everything that we want to hear. You know, so usually that lie has something to do with something in my life I need to take responsibility for, right? And then the very basic foundation of rebuilding after one of those relationships is self-worth. Everything else builds on that. And in order to rebuild your self-worth, you need to take a look at what are your values. So what really matters to you? And I always tell people, write this down, because like sometimes we think we know our values. We're like, yeah, I got it. But we don't really take an inventory of the values. So take a paper and write down like a free association exercise. Just give yourself 5 to 10 minutes all over the paper. Just write anything that comes to mind. What's important to you? What matters to you? What do you value? Then step away from that and look back. And then as you're looking at everything that you wrote, circle maybe the 5 or so things that really pop out as the most important. Those are your core values. So now that you know what your values are and what matters to you, now you can create standards and boundaries to protect those values. And then as you put those boundaries into practice, what happens is your self-worth starts raising. So usually people who get into these relationships have no boundaries. Either in childhood they were taught they had no right to have boundaries. They have no idea what a boundary is. They feel guilty for setting boundaries. Boundaries are key to protecting our self-worth. Everything of value has to have a protection.
Fantastic. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, that's great advice. Can people still come to you for help getting over personal trauma in relationships and exiting narcissistic or borderline personality disorder relationships?
Yeah, I do one-on-one sessions. Nowadays, most of my clients are actually hearing my recent interviews and they want to heal their personal traumas of any sort, really, so that they can step into leadership positions in their community and family through the process that we're going through in the world right now.
Excellent advice. Okay, good. All right. Well, we'll link to all that in the show notes. And thanks for your awesome interview. This was great. Really appreciate all that.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Excellent answers. And yeah, thanks a lot. And we'll keep in touch.
Enjoy Texas.
Thank you.
It's warmer and freer. Yeah.
Okay.
One day. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
And that was our chat. Meredith Miller, what'd you think, buddy?
That was as good as I expected it to be. Yep. It was fantastic.
Just as good?
Yeah. I wish I would have learned about her, many years ago, but it's all good. No, many years ago. Yeah. But no, I think she's fantastic. People got to look her up. I heard her on that Reiner Fulmick episode, which
I don't know who that is.
He's the lawyer that's doing a Nuremberg 2.0.
Oh, is that still happening?
Yeah.
Is it happening now?
Yeah, it's all happening.
For real?
It's all happening. Well, yeah, it's all happening.
For real though, or is this like the?
Well, hey, I'm not putting
like that church in Europe that says all sorts of shit and nothing ever happens. The one that said the Trudeau is a genocider or whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm not putting any weight in it.
Okay, good.
So, but some people say it's happening.
Some people.
Yeah, some people fall. He's interviewed like hundreds of top doctors and scientists and people
Who's
like
the
herself.
first domino to fall?
In Europe, maybe like Poland or something like that, or some like
the whole country.
Well, no. Well, I think they've started lawsuits in there, but I just don't have any hope in the law system because look what's happening with the JCCF and in Canada. Every province and all these people have all been sued for various things over this, and they just keep extending the deadline, push it out. Oh, we don't have to give you our data. We'll get back to you with that.
That's not
losing.
Well, it's not
solving the problem.
It's not fucking new either, man. Try and get divorced in less than a year and a half. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
It's going to take fucking 4 or 5 court appearances and they're going to be 4 or 5 months apart.
But they're saying that a lot of people are going to hang for this,
Hang?
Yeah. Like they're talking about
gallows? Maybe that's what the guillotines are for. Not for us.
For the politicians. It's crazy.
Big thanks to Meredith for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks if you're one of the few, 1 in 100, 2 in 100 that choose to support our work over here at Grimerica.
We can't do it without you.
We can't do it without you. We'd have to stop it without you. We don't want to stop it. We're hoping you don't want us to stop it.
Maybe you think the show's free. I mean, I can tell you this: there's still tens of thousands of more people listening to the show than are supporting the show. So there's a few of you that could start out the new year right. Put your karma in the right place. Go head over to grimerica.ca/support today. Sign up for a monthly, whether it's $1 a month or $50 a month or $1,000 a month. That's up to you. You can make a one-time donation while you're there. Get caught up. And keep going. I think this is episode like 528 or something, 529. It's getting up there. America.ca/support. If you're getting some value from the show, it's not a free show. It's a value for value show. So if it's adding some value to your day, your commute, your workout, your job, America.ca/support, you decide. While you're on there, search for in the interwebs or maybe you're in the show notes, head over to adultbrain.ca today and hammer on to some of them audiobooks Graham reads. There's a ton of them. 31, I think, available, or 32 almost. There's
a couple Charles Fort books out there now. The one I was trying to reference tonight was Book of the Damned, which will be out soon.
But it's not out yet. Probably this week.
Yeah.
And then the Wild Talents Talents and New Lands will be out by the time this comes out. And all the other ones, you guys know them, adultbrain.ca. Use your adult brain today. Join the chats, grimerica.ca/chats. Head over to contact@thecabin.com. There is still some availability in a couple of Randall events next year. Get signed up now. I think that's about it. We love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
I'm walking gingerly through the rat race. Take a look at the big old smile on my face. Kicking around down by the pool of narcissists. The people are many, they preen themselves. Oh, how they navel gaze. Somewhere over that hill, the gloomy skies cease to exist. I'm climbing that hill, I pass by and pity the poor Sisyphus. I go into hyperdrive, turn into a beam of light. I'm strolling down aesthetic electric avenue. The people are predictable, they say good morning, how do you do? When out of nowhere, a randomly pure angel in the crosswalk bumps into me, and in doing so knocks all the evil and all the wind out of me. And it's black as tar, ugly as ever, and of no apology. This angelic mama sings heavenly of the truest theology. Together we're a seraphim dream, forever young with no chronology. 1,000 years from now we'll be written into ancient mythology. We go into hyperdrive, turn into a beam of light. Can you tell me about the view up there? It's sparkling remarkably, the air is crystal clear. Well, please won't you tell me what it takes to transcend this place? A little bit of heart and a whole lot of soul. Take a look at the big old smile on my face, as my angel says, dance with me and your life will never, ever, ever be dull. I go into hyperdrive, turn into a beam of light. 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 adultbrain.ca. That's ADULTBRAIN.ca.